Hello everyone, 5 Minute here. Hope y'all are having a wonderful day so far. Now that we're in the middle of HHN announcement season, I figured I can prepare myself and hopefully prepare anyone else watching this for haunt season by going down memory lane and talk about the best of Halloween Horror Nights. And for this video in particular, I'm going to be doing something that I really don't see a whole lot of people talk about, at least on YouTube. One of the things that Halloween Horror Nights has that separates itself from all the other big haunts from all over the world are the inclusion of popular horror licenses. HHN's specialty is their ability to bring to life scenes, environments, and characters from some of the scariest pieces of pre-existing films, gaming, television, and even music. And for the most part, all 4 HHN events from all over the world do a great job in recreating those elements in live action. And today, I'm going to be highlighting my personal favorite examples and the Hollywood events. This is my top 10 IP to maze adaptations. Now let me preface that this is not my top 10 favorite mazes of all time. I'm going to talk about the houses that I believe did the best job at being a faithful recreation of the intellectual property it was based on. Which houses checked the most boxes when it came to adapting the source material. Which mazes felt most like the movie or show or game it was based on. So obviously this list is not going to include any original mazes. Also, mazes that are based on IPs but have a unique take on the license or tell an original story will not count as well. Biggest example of that is the Universal Monsters mazes. Yes, they're based on a whole franchise, but they never directly adapt the films, and the mazes overall have a darker and edgier tone that maybe once in a while takes some inspiration from the films. But yeah, stuff like that is not going to be included in this list. So, with all that out of the way, let's dive into the actual list. Let's start off with some honorable mentions. Mazes that just barely don't crack the top 10, but still do a pretty decent job at adapting their respective IPs. Creepshow. They decided to adapt 3 stories from the original film and 2 episodes from the show, but me personally, I wish they borrowed more elements from the movie. I still think they did a pretty good job with a lot of stuff here, particularly how they brought all the characters and environments to life. The Shining. Just like Creepshow, they did a good job with recreating the set design from the film, and most of the characters look great as well. Honestly, the only reason why this is in the honorable mentions is because of how they handled the bloody elevator, which I'm not even gonna bother getting into right now. American Horror Story. These mazes gave me everything I thought was severely lacking in the Walking Dead mazes, and that's all the main characters getting love, instead of just the scary looking creatures and none of the main characters. I really wish we could have gotten more of this show at HHN. Now, let's kick this list off with my number 10, and that is going to be Halloween. I'm going to include all the different versions they've done over the years in this one pick. By the way, some picks on this list will include more than one maze, others will just have one maze. So first we had Michael Myers Comes Home from 2015, which is based on the 1978 classic. They really paid homage to that movie and did it so much justice while bringing an aggressive and visceral energy that makes for a scary Horror Nights house. Then there was one based on Halloween 2 from 2016, which is my personal favorite. They successfully recreated all the kills from that movie and all the scares were actually very well designed. But the real star of that maze was the ending, revolving all around the skull pumpkin from the poster. Then there's Halloween 4 from 2018, and once again, they did a good job including most of the characters and kill scenes. And finally, in 2022, they did the first film again, but they made it slightly different and even included more stuff from that movie. All these houses were a lot of fun, and all the Halloween fans were delighted after experiencing them. My number 9 is actually gonna be The Last of Us. Now, I haven't actually played the game, but to prepare myself for the house, I watched like the cutscenes and gameplay from YouTube videos. The house only focused on a singular chapter of the game, and it's like a filler chapter in terms of the story, but honestly, I think that's the best way to approach a video game maze. It pretty much sums up the plot of the game, featured all the characters and environments, and even had some cool moments and Easter eggs. That whole attraction was just so well put together, and I've heard nothing but praises from fans of the game. My number 8 is going to be Stranger Things, but only the first time they had it. When Universal first announced they were making a Stranger Things maze back in 2018, many fans, including myself, were super excited, and when the event started and I finally walked through it, I was very happy with it. I think this maze holds my record to this day for the most amount of times I've geeked out over things I recognized. They translated the set design and characters very well. I remember a lot of people being disappointed with how they made the upside down, but I didn't think it was bad. I thought they did an okay job. One thing I can't defend, however, are the Demogorgon costumes. All the demos were too short, had only one expression, which was the open mouth look, and they all looked too white. But other than that, they did a fantastic job adapting everything from the first season of the show. Shame they never made any more Stranger Things mazes. My number 7 is gonna be Poltergeist. I've always wondered what a Poltergeist maze would look like, so when they announced it back in 2018, I was very curious to see what Universal had cooked for us. Any scene or creature from that movie you could think of was present in that maze. Everything was just like how it was in the movie, even down to the music playing in the background. Only reason why it's not higher on the top 10 is because there were a few too many black walls from what I remembered, but other than that, it was great. I went through the maze with my mom, and Poltergeist is one of her all-time favorite movies. She ended up really enjoying it, so if the house gets the stamp of approval from a big fan of the movie, then that's a win in my eyes. My number 6 is going to be Jordan Peele's Us. I'm not gonna lie, I remember not being all that excited for this house, but I was not prepared for how great it actually was. And I enjoyed it mostly because they did a fantastic job recreating the most memorable moments from that movie. They featured pretty much all of the characters, and I was actually really impressed with what they were able to pull off with the set design. Just the facade alone was awesome, from the one-to-one replica of the funhouse entrance to the music playing in the background. Fun fact, the actual choreographer for the film actually trained the tethered scare actors for this maze, and even the Jupiter's Claim section, just so they can act like how they were in the movie. That's just super awesome. Us overall was a great time, definitely one of the biggest surprises for me at Horror Nights. Number 5 is gonna be A Quiet Place. Ever since the idea of a Quiet Place haunted house first came to be, I've always wondered how they would pull it off. Would the whole maze be dead silent until a noise occurs, a monster comes, and then we all die, and then the maze ends? Yeah, I had no idea how they would make that a traditional haunted attraction while still being true to the movies. Well, fast forward to 2024, and they managed to do exactly that. I think the two big things that really made this a fantastic adaptation for me were the animatronics for the aliens and the actors speaking sign language. The overall production design was off the charts with this house, and just like Us, I was not prepared for how awesome it was going to be. My number 4 is going to be Krampus. Ever since Horror Nights had a dark Christmas scare zone, fans have been demanding a maze centered around the legend of Krampus. And this was even around the time the movie from Universal was coming out. It was actually made into a maze, and it was indeed based on the movie, and oh my lord, it was so much fun. This maze has what I think is my personal all-time favorite facade that they've ever made at Horror Nights in Hollywood. Sure, it's not as big as, say, Ghostbusters or even The Weeknd's Nightmare Trilogy, but it's so detailed and so much like the film, and it served its purpose as a great first impression that gives guests an idea of what kind of house this was. The two main standouts for me were the creature designs and the sets that just screamed demented Christmas. I don't really see a whole lot of HHN fans giving Krampus the flowers it deserved. It was such a great maze. Now before we get into my top 3, I would like to quickly talk about my dishonorable mentions, because while Universal usually does a great job bringing the movies to life, it's important to remember that there were times where things just didn't quite work out and they unfortunately fumbled the bag with some mazes. While the first Stranger Things maze was awesome, the sequel house, I can confidently say, is one of my least favorite attractions of all of Horror Nights, and it's mostly because they did such a poor job representing the second season. They only had 2 of the main characters making an appearance, and they only had like 3 scenes that went on for way too long, stretching them out to make like 10 rooms worth of maze. Then there's the Haunting of Hill House. Now to be fair, I started the show and never finished it, but I heard from fans of the series that they made odd creative choices with a lot of things for the maze. The whole thing felt so awkward and the effects weren't exactly the best. There was also Ash vs. Evil Dead. They didn't make the greatest showcase of the show it was based on, mostly because half of the maze consisted of black walls, and as far as the stuff they actually did have, there were only like 3 or 4 deadites running around, actors wearing horrible looking Bruce Campbell masks, and there was like little to no blood and gore. Massive letdown. Fun fact for all the newer Horror Nights fans, did you know that they made a maze based on the Seth Rogen comedy This Is the End? Yeah, and it was in 3D. The whole maze felt like it was made by people who've actually never seen the movie. If your This Is the End attraction doesn't even end with the Backstreet Boys performing in heaven, that's how you know you messed up big time. And finally, I want to bring up a maze that's half honorable mention and half dishonorable mention. And that's going to be the Horrors of Blumhouse, the one featuring Freaky and the Black Phone. The Freaky section was a lot of fun and perfectly encapsulated the vibe of that whole movie. However, the Black Phone section was so underwhelming because there were a lot of key aspects from the movie completely missing here in the maze. Now that we got all that out of the way, let's continue on the top 3. Honestly, my 10 through 4 are interchangeable because I enjoyed all these adaptations equally. However, I do have a clear top 3 and a clear order with these 3. So, my number 3 is going to be Ghostbusters, and I am including both the first maze from 2019 and Frozen Empire from 2024. I remember when the first maze originally got announced, a lot of people were complaining that Horror Nights has gone full-on kid-friendly simply because it's not traditional horror. I don't know, I think one of the most iconic movies of the 1980s that features ghosts, demon dogs, and giant marshmallow monsters is very deserving of being a walkthrough attraction for Universal Studios. All the most memorable scenes from the first film were translated very well. The ghosts were recreated very beautifully and all the face actors were very well cast. It was a Ghostbusters fan's dream come true. Years later, and Frozen Empire did just as good of a job as the previous version. Filled with references to the entire franchise and fun scares, both Ghostbusters houses made for such great experiences for Halloween lovers and movie lovers alike. My number 2 is going to be An American Werewolf in London. This was one of the first mazes I've ever experienced during my very first year of HHN, and after walking through this house and a couple of others that year, I thought to myself, yeah, Horror Nights is going to be my new favorite obsession. And it's mostly due to the fact that I was extremely impressed with how they were able to bring the movie to life. I watched it a couple days before attending the event, so it was still pretty fresh in my mind, and I really like how they managed to make the werewolves and other creatures look exactly like how they did in that movie. The makeup department had some Rick Baker shaped shoes to fill, and they honestly delivered. I think they also nailed the music and other aspects of the sound design, like the snippets of dialogue from the movie like scattered throughout the maze audio. I thought that was really cool. And I'm kind of sidetracking here, but I just love how nowadays Universal is going back to their roots and like bringing back like larger than life animatronics that get real close to you. I loved American Werewolf. This is one maze that I actually wouldn't mind experiencing again if they ever bring it back. But my number 1, the maze that I think does the best job at bringing to life the IP it's based on. And that house is none other than Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Killer Clowns is unironically one of my all-time favorite horror movies, so when Universal announced the house, I was excited, but I also tried to temper my expectations in case it was a disappointment. And thank the heavens it was not a disappointment. They knocked it out of the park with Killer Clowns. They absolutely nailed the tone of the house. It wasn't too scary, but it wasn't too goofy either. All of the clowns were so cool looking and they were so tall as well, except for Shorty, of course. They also managed to include like almost all of the most memorable scenes from the movie in such a small venue. One of my favorite parts of the movie is the "another door" scene, and they even managed to incorporate that, which is amazing. And of course, you can't talk Killer Clowns without mentioning the music. Both John Mazzari's score and the Dickies theme song were included in this maze, and it excited me so much that it gave me goosebumps. I felt like a kid in a candy store every time I walked through this maze back in 2019. And it is, in my opinion, hands down, the best adaptation that Horror Nights has ever made in the form of a maze. And that wraps up today's video. If you like what you saw, go ahead and click the like button. If you want to see more content like this to prepare yourself for Haunt Season 2025, go ahead and click the subscribe button. If you stuck around to the very end of the video, thank you so much for watching, and until then, see you all in the fog.